try to make me feel embarrassed. There are taps I've been in name, but they tell me I'm the one with problems. They're the ones who are insane, so for those who are but won't admit it, you shouldn't be like that, cause you could be 20% cooler and 10 seconds slow. Shout it out. I'm proud to be a brony. Yeah, yeah. I'm proud to be a brony.
Hello mayors and gentlecourts, my fellow bronies. Welcome to I'm Brony and I'm Proud. I've got Lycan from Lycan Beads with me, airing every Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. EST on Cantlot Hill. G'day, Lycan.
Hello, everypony.
How's it going, Lycan? How you doing, man?
I am very, very tired right now.
Oh, that's okay. I'll give you a pat later.
Thank you. I will need one of them, I'm sure.
So, how did you become a brony?
Well, I became a brony back in, I think it was about June of 2012. I was just browsing the internet and I saw some posts about My Little Pony, and I was quite curious about the show. I was like, oh, why is there so many people interested in this kids show? I was like, oh, okay. And the very, very first episode I ever watched was Put Your Hoof Down from season 2. And it was a Fluttershy episode. And I was like, had some funny moments. It had a nice story. It was quite interesting. I'm like, this is actually pretty good. Now, by this time, only season 1 and season 2 had been released. So I thought, I'll just go back and I'll watch episode 1 from season 1 and see what happens. So I watched episode 1, season 1, and it got me interested. And I was like, I'll just watch episode 2. And then I was like, I'll just watch episode 3 and 4, so on. And so that's how I got interested in My Little Pony. Now, I was watching the show back in June, July. It was around that period of 2012. I didn't actually become a brony until about October of 2013, about 14 months after I started watching the show. You're probably wondering, how did that happen? Well, I was watching the show and I knew that there was some content out there. So I knew there was Equestria Daily and a couple of things like that. But I didn't know how to interact with the brony community. There was no one saying, hey, look, there's an entire community over here. Come be a part of it. Come do things. So for over a year, I was basically just watching the show, sometimes visiting Equestria Daily and that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of cool. Anyway, it was in October of 2013 that I came across a website called Everfree Radio. Well, it's actually Everfree Network at the time. And I started listening to the radio for about a week or so. And I found a button on the side that said, join the chat. So join the IRC. And I went in there. And in typical Lycan fashion, I go, hey, everyone, how's it going? You know, I just found this chat. I just started talking to some people. And apparently some people in the chat liked me. So they were like, hey, come join a Skype group. Hey, let's chat some more. Hey, come help out. And I got involved in the community from there. So in short and summary, I started watching the show in June of 2012, but I didn't officially become a brony until about October 2013 when I joined the chat and started chatting with other bronies.
Awesome. So is there any more to this story?
Yes, actually. That period of June 2012 and October 2013, season 3 came out. Now, I absolutely hate spoilers. I just cannot stand them at all. So I watched season 3, episode 1 and 2. I'm like, oh, this is really awesome. Then episode 3 and 4, etc., etc. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And each time an episode came out, I knew nothing about it. I didn't even know what the episode was called. And so when season 3, episode 13 came along, where Twilight became a princess, that was just phenomenal and mind-blowing for me. And I was like, oh, I cannot believe this is happening. Oh my gosh, what is going on? Whereas I found out later, a lot of the community had already been spoiled to the fact that Twilight would become a princess. But for me, that was absolutely mind-blowing scene. I was like, I cannot believe this. What is my life? Very interesting part for me, especially looking back at it now.
So, we're moving in time now, a little bit forward. Being in the community, you're engaging with your fellow bronies. Probably not too long until Lycan and I first met when I moved up to Brisbane from Melbourne. My understanding that it wasn't too long before you entered the podcasting scene yourself. So talk about that.
When I first joined the fandom, I saw some of the community shows and I tried to help out where I can. I wasn't trying to get famous, trying to get my name out there or anything. I was genuinely just interested in helping out. There was one instance where Sketchy Sounds had a podcast where he would sing songs across Everfree Radio for everyone to listen into. And he had a helper whose name was Princess Twilight. And anyway, that day, Princess Twilight couldn't actually join the chat to help out, take the song requests and help Sketchy out. So I'm like, hey, I can help you out. So I created up a spreadsheet of song requests and sent it to him. And I was like, hey, look, here's what people have requested. And he's like, oh, thank you. When Princess Twilight did find out what I did, he's like, hey, you're pretty cool. Invited me to a Skype group and we got chatting. And I got more and more involved in the community. And I wanted to create some of my own content. So I got to know some more people and I got to know artists and I got to know musicians, YouTubers, quite a few people that did quite a lot of stuff in the community. One of those people was Norman Sanzo from the MBS show. He invited me on and he's like, hey, do you want to come on the show and we'll do a quick interview? And I'm like, sure. So we set up a little interview there and we got chatting and he's like, you're pretty good at this. He invited me on to do a guest interview with a couple of other people as a guest podcaster. And I'm like, sure, I'll do that. The only problem is that the podcast, or at least when he did his recording, was about 1 a.m. for me. So that was very, very early in the morning or late at night. And a couple of times I was like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I got to go to bed. Other times I'm like, yeah, it's only another hour or two. So I stayed up later and joined him on his podcast. That would be about the time that you moved up to Brisbane and you posted up on the Queensland Bronies Facebook page. You're like, hey guys, I have a ticket to Dreamworld on the Gold Coast. Who wants to come with me? And that's where I'm like, yep, I'll definitely come with you, being the social guy that I am. And we had absolute fantastic time. It was amazing. Did you enjoy it, Lucky Night?
Oh golly, did I? It was swell. So swell. And of course, our favorite was definitely the tailspin.
For everyone listening in, there's this ride where you get to control the wings and you got to try and make your plane spin around. And we managed to get it such that we were spinning and spinning and spinning so much throughout the ride that we couldn't even walk straight for 2 or 3 minutes after we left the ride.
That's right. And of course, as reward for, mastering the challenge, we got stickers.
Yes, we did. They had actual stickers for people that managed to make the airplane spin. We couldn't even see straight. We couldn't even walk straight. I didn't even know how we didn't throw up or get sick or something from that ride.
We were just in the zone. And it's funny, for me, it was my first time on the ride. When we got off, my brain didn't know what actually it had experienced. It wasn't until when we got on the ride again that my brain was able to understand what it was seeing. So then I was able to say, oh, so that's what I experienced.
Yeah. And it was at that meetup between you and I that I introduced you to a lot of the other people in the community and be like, oh, hey, look, here's this guy. Here's this person. This person does art. This is a shoutcaster. Do you remember me showing you that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was also Lycan who introduced me to Team OK.
Yes, we will talk about Team OK more in depth later in the show, I'm sure of it.
And speaking of podcasts, talk about how Lycan Beads came about.
So I've mentioned the Everfree network previously, and it was from that I met someone called Nightmare Moon, aka Heatwave. Now, Heatwave had a show that had been going for a long time called the Lunar Republic Takeover. They would take over the radio for about 3 hours, and in the chat, people would request songs to be played. And so everyone was like, yeah, play this song, play that song. And from there, they'd create a 3-hour radio show. During that time, they'd also have this story. So they'd have like a little role play that would go across the show, and in between, play song requests. At one point, they were like, oh, I can't do an episode in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. I was very, very nervous, but I went up to them like, hey, do you mind if I do a show? And they're like, sure, you can do a show. And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have any songs. I didn't have any knowledge about the Brony community and how to play music on the radio. I didn't even know how to broadcast. And I'm like, you'll have to help me out a bit. And they're like, yeah, I can do that. Okay, so how do I broadcast? And so they taught me how to broadcast. And I thought, what I can do is I know a couple of bronies so far. So I did a quick interview with a couple of bronies who were in the community, and they became part of the show. And I took requests from people in the chat. So I had to get the song, cue them up to be played, and then broadcast them across the radio. And so that was how I got my very first radio show. I was actually filling in for someone else and doing an episode for them. Of course, they took back their show and were going for about another 2 months. And then again, they were like, oh, I can't do an episode. So I very nervously walked up to them again and said, oh, do you mind if I take over again? So then I had episode 2 of my show. Again, just another fill-in. And so I did the whole radio thing, creating episode 2. I was so nervous because it took like a week of preparation and getting ready for this thing. And from there, that's how I learned how to broadcast, learned how to queue up songs, talk to the chat, and run a radio show as it was. And that's how I got into the scene.
Awesome. So the episodes of the Lunar Republic takeover, did you call them by any chance Lycan Beads at that time, or was that something you came up fresh when you started to have your own show after that?
No, what had happened was still just filling in for the Lunar Republic takeover. Lycan Beads didn't actually become into existence until about November 2014. This point, this was about June, July 2014. However, being my usual jovial self, instead of calling it Lunar Republic takeover, I called it the Lycan Republic takeover.
It's Luna, Lycan. It's an easy word replacement and it works. So many levels. Go on.
I did Lycan Republic Takeover, episode 1, and then Lycan Republic Takeover, episode 2. And episode 2 was about in September, October of 2014. And I was like, oh, I want my own radio show. And it was about that time that Heatwave had announced saying, guys and girls, every pony else that listens to the radio, I'm going to be taking a short break for about a month or 2. And I approached them and I said, hey, do you mind if I take your spot weekly until such time as you either come back or decide to end the project altogether? And they said, sure, that sounds like a great idea. So this was in about November of 2014. And early December 2014 was announced that the Everfree network would be shutting down completely. So all the radio shows and everything would be moving across to Canterlot Hill, which was being created to replace Everfree Network. There were still a lot of people that were interested in continuing the legacy of a lot of the shows that took place on Everfree Network. And from there, the Canterlot Hill website was created in about 3 weeks. So in late December of 2014, Canterlot Hill was created and they invited all the shows that were currently airing on the Everfree network to move over to Canterlot Hill as of the 1st of January 2015. Now, as I was mentioning earlier about Lunar Republic Takeover, they'd already mentioned that they'd be taking a short hiatus. When Everfree Network was announced that they'd be shutting down and that everything would be going across to Canterlot Hill, Heatwave wanted to actually continue the show on the new station and was hoping change in venue, the new coat of paint, as it were, would provide more listeners and would reignite their passion continuing their radio show. And so my plans of actually replacing them as the Lunar Republic takeover then fell by the wayside, and I was then left with no radio show to do.
Oh, so sad. So sad. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel, isn't there, Lycan?
There is. So I was left with no radio show to take over, but I still wanted to create my own podcast about music. I still had all my ideas from November of 2014 to think about. And I was already great friends with Fritzi Beat. And I was like, hey, I'm looking to do a radio show. And I was chatting to Fritzi Beat. I want to create a radio show about music. Would you be interested in being co-host? And he was like, sure, that sounds great. At this point, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what the content was going to be. I didn't know anything about the show. All I knew is that I wanted to make a radio show. So I was chatting to Heatwave and I'm like, okay, I want to do this radio show. And they're like, sure, you can do one. And I was like, I have no idea what to do. They're like, well, come up with some ideas, throw them by me, and we'll see what happens. So I came up with some ideas. I was going to have a fandom classic. So this was basically well-known songs that sound amazing. I came up with an idea about playing new music. So every week, well, actually every day, new music gets released in the Brony fandom. These just accumulate, and there are so many new songs that come out in a week. It is almost impossible to keep track of these things. But having a radio show that comes out every week, I'd be able to play those new songs. So that was another idea. Have some artists, some PMVers, animators, other musicians, and ask them, oh, what kind of music inspires you? How has the Brony scene helped you out? Brony call-ins. So having a radio show, you generally get people calling in or asking you questions. So I had an idea about having game shows, quiz questions that could be answered in the chat and whatnot. Fandom news, take what had been happening in the past week or so and reporting that out. Like, oh, there's this charity auction, or this happened in the fandom, or this other thing was going on. I was also going to have little role play segments, so kind of like an episodic short skit that might go on, talk about conspiracies, some kind of thing to keep people engaged, and just having a lot of fun with having a weekly radio show. So these are just some of the ideas that I came up with. And I was chatting to Heatwave about these and saying, look, these are some of the ideas. And they were like, the RP segment, just get rid of it. Fandom news, and it's not very interesting because some people may not be into that kind of thing. So we narrowed it down to we would play the fandom classics, songs that are really well known and have helped shape the fandom. We had a theme, so we're going to have a weekly theme. So one week would be Luna, the next week would be Celestia, another week might be CMC. We've had many, many themes across the weeks. We've also got a request section, so people can say, hey, I really want to hear this song played on the radio, and we'll play that. But probably the biggest part of the show has been the new beats, playing the new music that has come out over last week. And that forms an entire hour of our radio show, is just playing the new music, the stuff that has just come out.
Far out. Sort of doing with my show, that I'm trying to be more grassroots and sort of really introduce or even reintroduce listeners to creatives that, of course, that exist on DeviantArt, Team OK, which we'll probably get to next, and otherwise. So there's so much talent, and I believe it's our responsibility to give that talent a voice.
Definitely. When I conceptualized this, now this was back in November of 2014. The first episode of Lycan Beads didn't go out until late January 2015. So it was at least 2 months from inception to having the first episode ready and broadcast.
Good things take time. As the saying goes, good things come to those who wait. And it was worth the wait.
I was extremely naive at the conception because the original document that I wrote, it says, oh, I'd play like 5 to 10 songs depending on how active the fandom is being at creating music. I have an issue that there's normally over 15 songs written and produced in an entire week, that they don't all fit in an hour-long show, and that some of these things actually have to be cut from the show because there's just not enough time to fit them all in.
Lycan Beads, breaking Brony's heart since 2015.
Yeah, since January 2015. I haven't even talked about how Fritzi and I get along in the show. For those listening in, if you're interested, there is actually an art to conducting radio interviews, doing radio shows, and producing radio content. It is not an easy art, and it is very difficult to spell out. It comes down to experience and doing things over and over again and making lots of mistakes.
But the important thing is to learn from those mistakes in order to grow.
Oh, definitely.
So coming back to Fritzi Beat, how did you guys meet?
Oh, how did we meet? I don't even know how we met. All I know is that it's been like, oh, hey, Fritzi Beat. And then over that time, we just got chatting more and more and more until I asked him, hey, do you want to do a radio show together? And he's like, yeah, let's do that. So we've actually become quite close with regards to being radio presenters. And also, we talk a lot outside of the radio show as well. We're always on Skype, chatting to each other, talking about what's been happening, what's going on in our lives. And I've even chatted to Fritzi Beat's brother, name is Toothpaste. We've just gotten closer as it is with regards to being co-hosts and also just great friends.
Oh, lovely. It's a bromance quite like ours, isn't it, Lycan?
Yes, I can remember how we met because it was very abrupt and sudden. But Fritzi Beat and I have just grown over time.
Do you want to do a podcast? Do you want to do a podcast? Is that how it happened?
Funnily enough, it probably was exactly how it happened.
Fritzi's got musical knowledge that rivals no Brony, would make any Brony's head spin, and you are a tech man. You know and as you said earlier, the ins and outs and how to get it back in again.
Oh, definitely. There's no shortage of me wanting to create content, wanting to edit content, wanting to just produce content that people want to hear. And so Fritzi has the musical knowledge. He gives me the list of songs like, hey, these songs came out this week and they're awesome. Play them on the radio. And so then I hire them and I then do all the recording, all the production. So it's very much the inside job while Fritzi has all the musical knowledge. Just make a great duo like that. And I'm like, hey, Fritzi, I'm going to do this. And they're like, okay, let's do that. A radio show is about entertainment, not just information. So it's always important to keep things fun, interesting, and something that your audience will want to listen to, want to engage in, and want to be like, oh, I want to hear more about this. So it's not really a documentary. It's more like edutainment, as you'd say.
Fun, 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 fun. For this podcast, you were talking about being interesting. For me, it's finding interesting people, or should I say more accurately, people that I'm interested in talking to. So, if I like your work, chances are you're going to get a message from me saying, do you want to be on my podcast? Or do you want to do a collab? Probably technically, Lycan and I have been collaborators pretty much from the beginning, and Lycan is actually a very special brony who inspired me to do this podcast, or should I say, nudged me in the right direction. So thank you so much for that, Lycan. I love you so much for that.
You're more than welcome. It's great to know that can leave a lasting footprint on someone else's life and help inspire them to better themselves.
As much as I love cheese, do you mean hoofprint, Lycan?
Yes, very much a hoofprint.
So it's safe to say that collaborating with Fritzi be a wonderful experience.
Oh, Fritzi and I complement each other just fantastically. We both have our strengths and weaknesses. We just go well together. I can create a lot of the scripts for the episodes each week, and Fritzi Beats the one with the music knowledge, and it's like, hey, this song was awesome. We totally got to talk about that. I'm like, sure, we can do that. So as co-hosts, the show would not happen without one or the other. That's for sure.
Fantastic.
I remember when we first did our first episode, it was about a week out from airtime, and I was creating scripts like crazy. I'm like, oh, this is what we're going to say, this is what we're going to do. And we're putting together the songs list and the themes, spending about a week on it, writing everything up, what we're going to say, what songs we're going to do, and what we're going to put where. And it was like, okay, we have to have this absolutely perfect. And so this was the very first episode. Of course, a week later was episode 2. The very first episode went amazingly. We're like, yay, we actually did something and it worked well. Thank you all. We had lots of fun doing it ourselves. We hope you can all tune in next week. And then there was episode 2. And it was very much of, we've got to write all the scripts out. So we started writing the scripts, and it was a lot of work getting the music together, compiling the whole thing, getting it all ready and done. And then as we got on through the episodes, we managed to find out each other's style. And so instead of writing out word for word what we're going to say, we're like, we're going to talk about this topic. So we'd actually have the topics written down. And so we'd be like, we're going to talk about this is coming up or this, and put a little bit of information there and stuff. So we had some kind of idea where we're going. So this was about episode 4, 5, 6, etc. Now, when we look at our scripts for each episode, it's basically, the intro goes here. And that's about all we got written down. And we just follow each other on what we're going to say. So we may have we have to say the intro and we're leading into this song. And that's about all that's written down for our script. And I'm like, hey, Fritzi Beat, so what happened? And then we'd talk about something, and then we'd go on to something else. And at the end, we're like, okay, and here's our song that we're going to play. So we've got to the point now where we actually just follow each other. We will play off each other, and we no longer have to have every single thing written out, typed out, and what to say. That is how well we are going with regards to complimenting each other on the episodes.
If that isn't good collaboration, I don't know what is. Did you have any other inspirations to become a DJ, or was it solely Brony related? Maybe you've heard shows in the past, even before the fandom, that might have titillated your appetite.
That's a very difficult question. It's not that there was a single point or single moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to do this. I just became interested in creating a podcast and the music scene. I'm like, this is actually really interesting. And the more and more I got into it, I was like, I reckon I could do this. I'd be interested in doing something like this. And that's when I started talking with Fritz. I'm like, hey, do you think we can do this? And he's like, yeah, sure, we can do this. And so there was not one single moment or one single event. It was more just a growing interest into the podcasting scene, into the radio scene, into music itself.
Absolutely. I can totally relate to that. So we've covered the show. We've covered the beautiful, loving relationship we have with Fritzi Beat, how the show comes to be every week. What are your thoughts on the art and music communities in the fandom?
They are alive and well. You're always continuing to hear people going, the fandom is dying. This is happening. But in actual fact, people are creating content all the time. And the fandom is not dying. It's just that the caliber is increasing all the time. So when the fandom first started out, there were some amazing people that created some great songs and some awesome content. But there were also a lot of people that created very poor content. What's happened is that over time, more and more people have just created really good content, fantastic content in both art and music, and it's just diluting each other out. So people will say the fandom is dying, but in fact, it's just getting stronger and stronger, such that people don't notice that there's no longer one or two amazing people out there. There's so many great people out there in both artists and musicians that the fandom is saturated with.
So much content. We actually don't know what to do with it. And of course, with a fandom that was practically birthed in social media, that saturation continues to multiply. I know whenever I'm on DeviantArt and it's saying, oh, checking out this work, or, someone on Team OK has shared, oh, check out this artist. It's like, oh, well, this artist is cool. And what I'm now looking for, personally, what's different? And it's not too hard to find. But yeah, so much content that there's always something to whet the appetite for any brony, for any pony, anytime, anywhere, around the world.
Yeah, whereas early in the fandom, there was very few that were creating content. So people were like, oh, this is amazing. But now people are becoming more niche-like. So they'll find a niche that suits their style. So it might be electronic music, it might be rock music, could be blues music, and they've found a niche there. And so that's what they've got really good at. Same with the art. They might do some cartoon styles. They might do some painted styles. They might be really good at sketches. So even the artists have found their own niche in the community, in the fandom, and building upon that niche for themselves.
So much niche. Love the niche. Continuing on this subject of communities, Lycan and I are part of an online group called Team OK. Since he's the one that introduced me to it, therefore it's his honor to take us through Team OK. What we do, what we stand for, and where we're going.
Team OK is a community of artists that is more social than anything else. It is a place where people can go talk about art, say, hey guys, this is what I've just drawn. What do you think? Here's a work in progress. How can I improve it? Or I've just finished this. Can you please share it? And that's actually how it started out. It was, oh, I'll invite this artist. I'll invite that artist. And I actually knew a couple of the people that were in the art community. And so I was also invited to the group, despite the fact that I don't actually create any of my own art. So I was invited to this group of artists. Although they were really good at what they did, which was art, they weren't so good at the organizational side of things. That was actually organizing events, getting things together, helping promote themselves. And so that's where I came in. I joined the group and like, oh, we need to do this. Oh, we need to do that. Let's increase our presence over here. So from that, I had a big hand in creating the Team OK Deviant art page. And then from that, I actually spearheaded the campaign to get it from a Team OK DeviantArt page to a supergroup. So an actual premium DeviantArt page, which allowed us to do lots more things. We even have our own website, which I bought. So that was teamok.com. Even though I have almost no artistic ability, although I would like to have some, my talent lies more in the organizational side of things and inspiring people to do stuff that they enjoy so that more people can come together and achieve a common goal.
Everyone on Team OK that contributes to the organization of the organization, we're all volunteers and we have a first for helping others. And it wasn't too long that I started to contribute to the group, and we're now on Facebook and Twitter and we're still growing. Team OK is also famous for our charity and fundraising streams. So Lycan, take us through those.
So we've actually helped people all around the world. So from Spain, in the UK, some in Canada, some in the US as well. We've also done a charity stream for someone in Australia even. All this money that we've raised has helped them, their cause, and helped them out in some way, shape, and form for their life.
Absolutely. So if you're interested in joining Team OK, new members are joining daily. So check us out at facebook.com/Team OK streams, twitter.com/Team OK streams, and of course Team OK is on DeviantArt, Tumblr, and Lycan. Where are we not at?
Not at that dark corner over there.
So wherever the light touches is our kingdom, eh?
That's correct. It's a shameless Lion King reference.
And we're absolutely shameless on Lycan These Beats. I'm Brony and I'm proud. Even the MBS show. We're all brothers and all the best things come in threes, don't they?
Oh, certainly. We're all about entertainment and just keeping people interested. And informed, of course.
Well, thank you very much, Lycan, for being on I'm Brony and I'm proud. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me on.
Thanks again and catch you later.
So long, everyone.
Bye. This has been I'm Brony and I'm Proud. Lucky Knight speaking. Thanks for listening. Remember to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at IBAIPshow. Proud to be a Brony. Intro and outro by Black Griffin. My Little Pony, friendship is magic.
My little pony. I used to wonder what friendship could be. My little pony.